Mario Tirabassi's Prospect Pyramid is out at allchgo.com. You should read it. Mario, tell us about your process.
Yes, so every summer comes the lists of prospects around the league, not only in the NHL, but for every organization. I've always hated the numerical 1 to 20, 1 to 50, whatever it is, because you get into these nonsensical arguments of why is prospect A at number 7 when I have him at number 10, you idiot. And it's just like, okay, well, we're splitting hairs between two people like that much. So I went to going through the pyramid system, the tier system, where, you think look, okay, you have your base, your middle guys, and then your top guys. It all kind of goes up to a point of usually 1 or 2 players that is at the top, and you just get out of the weeds of those numerical rankings. So for the Blackhawks, I've done this a number of years. For the pyramid system, there's level 5, which is everybody else. Yeah. Basically, the guys that it's just like, well, they're here.
We're on that list.
Then there's level 4, where it's like, it's a most likely going to be just like a depth guy. Then level 3, it's more of like a complementary player. Then you get into level 2, which is more of a long-term NHL player, more important piece to the organization. And then your number 1, there's very few of these, but it is a franchise cornerstone type of player.
All right, well, give us an example. Let's start with the bottom tier, just to get a couple names out there so people know about where your head's at, and then maybe we go back to the top and work our way down.
Okay, so level 5 is everybody else. It's the unnamed prospects, the guys that are just in the system. Either it's hard to get a read on what they will be, or their ceiling is, it's a long shot. So we'll start with level 4 then, which is more of a average prospect, more of a depth guy. In level 4 for this year, I have recent draft pick Nathan Bem, John Mustard, Paul Ludwinski, Gavin Hayes, Martin Misiak, and Tage Harding.
So not zero shot.
Not zero shot, but it kind of looks like, okay,
shot.
They're in the system, longer shot. And I do want to focus on a guy that went down a level from last year to this year, and that's Paul Ludwinski. He had his first professional season last year, played the entire year with the Rockford IceHogs, former second-round pick, and I think that's where decrease comes from level 3 to level 4 for me personally with him, because I think the speed and the motor of his game was the enticing part that made him a high pick for Kyle Davidson in the second round. What we've seen from him in his first year, and it takes these guys some time to get acclimated to the professional game. Yeah. He wasn't a big numbers guy in junior, but he was a consistent competitor, a lot of speed. Just haven't seen that translate to the professional game yet. Obviously, there's still a lot of time and room for growth, but I have him in tier 4 here because I think the sparkliness of maybe his potential at the NHL level has kind of come down a little bit from last year.
Yeah, I think as we talk about Kyle Davidson's drafting and developing, and Ludwinski seems to be one of the names that people get hung up on as like, maybe this was a bit of a reach.
Really the only one.
Yeah.
I think as far as like got him in the second round, and yet you're kind of like looking at his NHL prospects and you're like, maybe?
Yeah.
Which you don't really want to talk about for a second round guy.
Well, I noticed too, I think this is the first year since you've been doing it, there's no one in that top tier.
Yeah. Well, since Connor Bedard has not been a prospect anymore, really, he really only was for his rookie year, they haven't had a guy that I would say is a franchise cornerstone guy. I mean, you have people at the top of the list like Artem Levshinov was a 2nd overall pick. Kevin Korchinski was a 7th overall pick. Anton Frondell, 3rd overall. Like, you have those guys that were those top 10 picks, but I just don't think that they have the unquestionable franchise-changing skill level as Connor Bedard had coming in to his NHL career. But I think you still have all those guys in that second tier. What is the top of the pyramid? Like I said, Levshinov. I have Frondell in there. Frank Nazar, Drew Comezzo, Oliver Moore, Sam Renzel also in that second tier. I also have Sasha Boisvert and Nick Lardis. Now, both of those guys have moved up a tier from where they were last year. I had both Boisvert and Lardis in the 3rd tier last year. I have them up to tier 3, or rather up to tier 2. And I do want to mention, I didn't say Kevin Korchinski. It's because he has played too many games to my standards to no longer be a quote-unquote prospect.
Fair.
I want to focus on Lardis. I think I moved him up from tier 3 to tier 2 because it's very hard to ignore a 70-plus goal season in the OHL. I think there's a lot of newfound hype and maybe expectation for him to jump to the professional game and be able to be that goal scorer, and that still remains to be seen. But I think already when he was drafted, he was thought of as, wow, that's a pretty good value for early in the third round when he was picked in 2023. And then, he had the injury 2 seasons ago that kind of cut his year short. He had 50 points in 37 games, and then he goes out and scores 71 goals this last season in the OHL. I think he's going to jump into the professional game, and if he can find space to get his shot off, I mean, I think the ceiling for him can be like a consistent 30-goal guy in the NHL.
Well, I like in your piece for LCHGO.com, you have examples of each tier. So for tier 2, which maybe if you're listening to this or haven't seen him on paper yet, it sounds like a lesser. We're talking about players like Patrick Sharp, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, Tony Amani, Brian Campbell. These are perennial all-star type players. They're just not franchise-altering guys. And those guys you have listed as Kane, Taves, McDavid, Crosby, Bedard.
Yeah.
That is a, when we use the term generational, that's what we're talking about. And right now, aside from Bedard, there's no one in the system that has that. How about tier 3?
Yeah. Tier 3 is where you want the most meat on the bone, so to say, because you want to have depth. You want to have depth in your system. You want to have a number of guys that you could say, you know what, if you look hard enough at them, maybe they could be a level 2 guy next year, like with Boisvert and Lardis, what they've done. Or, you at least look and you say, you have a lot of solid middle of the lineup guys. And I think the Blackhawks organization for the last few years have had really good, solid, okay, these probably are bottom 6 guys, bottom pair defensemen, good depth players. You need that. And then if you hit on those top picks, then you're talking about, okay, those are your game changer guys. Level 3 is like I said, very meaty for the Blackhawks. You have Landon Slager, Colton Dock, Aiden Thompson, Ryan Green, Roman Kanserov, Nolan Allen, Adam Guyan, Samuel Savoie, Merrick Vanacker, Ethan Del Mastro, Vaclav Nestrasil, Mason West, AJ Spellacy, and Jack Pridham. And with Kanserov, I will say it's more or less, we don't know exactly what he can be.
It's hard to tell
when he plays in the North American game. So could he be a tier 2 guy based off of skill alone? Probably. Sure. But I think you got to learn a little bit more about him and his game when he comes over and translate it. Del Mastro is a guy I had last year in tier 2. I had him down in tier 3. I think he's going to be less of Brent Seabrook than I think I might have been kind of overestimating him initially, but still, could be a guy that has a very long, important NHL career. One guy that I did move up from tier 4 to tier 3 from last year to this year is AJ Spellacy. I think there's a lot of promise to his game. He's one of those guys that, the raw tools is what he was drafted on. It was a 3rd-round pick. Kind of a similar story to Mason West, who was a 1st-round pick this year, where he was a football player and then committed to playing hockey. He's only committed to playing hockey full-time for a few seasons, but the leaps and bounds that his game has taken from that point to now has been really impressive.
And was awesome in the preseason last year.
Yeah, he made an impact in the preseason. He's big, he's fast, he's physical. He's very likely going to carve out a spot for him with Team USA at the World Juniors this upcoming winter. So I think that's another feather in his cap, and I think he's going to be a guy that when he does hit the professional ice, he has a very clear role that he can play. He's not going to be a big point producer. He's not going to play on your top power play, but he's going to be a guy that I think goes right into the middle of your lineup, is a physical presence, is a difference maker with his speed, and is a guy that I think is going to really, get the fan base behind him, and he has a great personality too. I know that doesn't really matter all that much in hockey.
Doesn't hurt.
But that's something that kind of can put you over the top with the fans once your on ice capabilities catch up.